Good morning to everyone. I think we should begin by giving tremendous praise and thanksgiving to the Almighty for the tremendous miracles that we're privileged to see over the last few days. When Hezbollah was knocked out, we thought the miracles were just unbelievable. When Hezbollah was knocked out, we thought the miracles were unbelievable. And Baruch Hashem, it's taken on a whole new scope of miraculous. And the Eibusha should help that it shouldn't be any karbanis, chas v'shalom, and Yidden should be safe wherever they are. Actually, I met with a group last night, and I asked them on a scale from 1 to 10, how much do you think that you have an impact on the situation, in the global situation in Eretz Yisrael? And they were hesitant to answer. I don't know exactly what they were very shy. I think that there's a sikha that I think we've learned before, that I think we need to review every so often to get our perspective clear on how much of a difference we can make. So the sikha is in Chelak Yud Gimel. Look at the sikha is Chelak Yud Gimel, page 285. You have a chance, you look it up. But I'll read it out. It's written in Yiddish. I'll read it out in English as I'm reading it. The Rebbe says as follows. This sikha was said in 1975 when there was the oil embargo. Those who are prepared to give away their age will remember it. So the Rebbe said then as follows, and everything the Rebbe said then applies to now 100 times more. In connection with the situation in general, and especially the recent events, and as they pertain to the Jewish people, and bearing in mind that all events in the world are led by the Almighty, the creator of the world, the one who leads the world. The hearts of kings and princes are in the hand of the Almighty. So it's self-understood that what is expected of us, first and foremost, is to strengthen our bond with the bond between the Jewish people and the Almighty. And this brings the healing to the current situation from the Almighty himself. And his cure is in a manner of from the onset that will not place it upon. Of course, there needs to be effort according to the rules of nature in order to make a vessel and a garment in which the blessing from the Almighty should enclose itself, because this is what he wants. As the Pasuk says, the Almighty God will bless you in all that you will do. So he's quite capable of sorting it all out miraculously, but he wants it to be through the garments of nature, and therefore he's instructed us to do what we need to do. However, the effort in connection with the political situation is only pertinent to individuals. But the main thing which is expected now is to strengthen the bond with the Almighty, the guardian of Israel. And this is dependent on every single Jew. Therefore, there's an obligation and a privilege on every Jew to increase in the study of Torah and the fulfillment of mitzvahs. To study Torah with diligence, each one according to his talents and abilities as described in Hilchos Talmud Torah, and to fulfill mitzvahs bihidur, with beautification. Also to arouse and inspire other Yidden, to influence as many Yidden as possible, to increase in the study of Torah and the fulfillment of mitzvahs. And through strengthening the bond with the Almighty, the giver of Torah and the commander of mitzvahs, we will surely see openly that this guardian of Israel doesn't sleep nor slumber. And it will be upon them will fall a fear and a fright. A fright will fall upon the enemies of the Jewish people to the point where they'll be silent like stone. They won't even think to start up with the Jewish people. According to this, it's also clear how it's totally inconsistent with true Jewish faith, the question which many people ask. That is, in such a situation in general, and especially the relationship of the nations of the world to the Jewish people. And here we're making a tumult about learning Torah, fulfilling mitzvahs, giving tzedakah to a poor man, davening with a minyan, and similar things. You're like, get real. There's big things going on. Says that the truth, however, is that whatever can be done according to the rules of nature is the vessel and the garment that can only be effective when it's filled with the blessing of Hashem. What can it achieve without it? And as mentioned before, that strengthening ourselves in Torah mitzvahs is something expected from everyone. And this is also very clearly stated in the Torah, which is the guide in our daily life and continuously for every single Jew. The Torah says, "Im b'chukoisei teilechu," if you will walk in my statutes, and you will guard my commandments, v'nasati shalom ba'aretz, I will give and place peace in the land. V'stalachti b'seichechem, I will walk in your midst, v'elech eschem kememiyos, and I will lead you upright. Since all matters of Torah and mitzvahs need to be done with joy, as it says, "Ivdu es Hashem b'simcha," serve the Almighty with joy, and a very great joy, as it says, "I rejoice over your commandments like one who finds great spoils." It's understood that the aforementioned arousal needs to be done not in a way that will bring about tension or worry, God forbid, but just the opposite, to create a bright and lively storm, to increase in Torah and mitzvahs, and to strengthen within the Jewish people the fullest faith that the guardian of Israel doesn't sleep nor slumber, and pointing out that talking about trust and faith is not just to calm people down, but rather this is the truth, that surely the guardian of Israel will guard the Jewish people wherever they are, both in the Holy Land and in the diaspora. Since the Yetzer Hara is an expert in his task, so it's possible that he will clothe himself in a cloak of humility and say to the person, "Who am I? What am I? That my acts should make an influence, should make a difference, should achieve big things. They should rescue the entire Jewish people." So we have to remember the explicit ruling of the Rambam, that a person should always visualize himself all year round as though he's half meritorious and half guilty, and that the entire world is half meritorious and half guilty. So the scale is exactly balanced. And by doing one mitzvah, you can tip the scale for yourself and for the entire world to the side of merit, and bring about for oneself and for the whole world salvation and rescue. It's a clear, explicit ruling for Kol Adam, for every single Jew, that through one mitzvah, be it in deed, in speech, or in thought, be it in connection with oneself or by inspiring others, one brings salvation and rescue for oneself and for the entire world. And this brings nearer the ultimate salvation and the ultimate rescue, which is the true and complete redemption from Mashiach Tzidkenu, the Karev Mamish. And if I can remind everybody something we've mentioned many times, I believe that everyone said that we all know that there's a button somewhere, Washington and Moscow, that if you press this button, it can bring Chas v'Shalom destruction to the world. And to be able to do that, you don't have to be very clever. You just have to follow instructions. And we know that meruba midat tova midas paramis. Now the measure of good is greater than the measure of retribution. So if there's a button that pushing this button can bring destruction to the world, there must be a button that pushing this button brings salvation to the world. And you don't have to be very clever to push it. You just have to follow instructions. And what's that button? That button is Torah and mitzvahs. The Yid studies Torah, performs mitzvahs, has Avos Yisrael, has B'tachim. This is the button that brings Yeshua v'Hatzalah to oneself and to the entire world. And we all have access to that button. You don't have to be rocket scientists to push it. You just have to follow instructions. The instructions that we have in the Torah, written Torah, the oral Torah, mitzvahs midar Torah, mitzvahs midar Rabbanan. When we do the Ma'aseh, the Dibur, and Achtava, with action, with speech, and with thought, what Hashem wants us to do, we are pushing that button that brings salvation to the world. So we should know that we are very influential. We're very powerful. We should never feel helpless. We're in a very, very powerful position because our deeds make all the difference. There's a mission in Pirkei Avos that says, "Da malamayla mimach." Literally, it means know what is above you. Says the Mezritcher Maggid, "Da," you should know. Malamayla, what's going on up there, is mimach. It's all coming from you. You're in the driver's seat. You're making it happen. And when we realize that, we realize what a responsibility we have and what a privilege we have. Instead of krechzing, we get on with the job with enthusiasm and with joy and with trust and faith in the Almighty. I heard Rabbi Glukowski from Rehovot spoke last night, and it's very interesting that, the Rebbe once told a group of women from the Sheikh Chabad who were on their way back from Detroit from a Lubavitch women's convention, and they came to the airport and the flight was delayed and they were very upset. and they phoned the Rebbe's office to ask for a bracha, and should be able to get out. They're stuck in the airport, and they need to get out. They all need to get home. The Rebbe's response was, a Jew is never stuck. Wherever a Jew is, he has a mission. So if these women find themselves for a longer amount of time than they expected to be in the Detroit airport, probably there's work to be done there. They should go around. They should look for Jewish women to inspire to light Shabbos candles. So I was reminded of this when I heard Rabbi Glukowski say that there's a new front, because he lives in a building with 36 flats, 36 condominiums. So when a siren goes off and they have to go into the shelter, so there's 36 families going down to the shelter. So his wife has cakes ready. She brings down with her cake, so to give people to make a bracha. The children go around with pushkas and they give out coins that people should give tzedakah, sing the gunim together, utzu eitz of sufa, shiyas amecha, to strengthen people's amunah and bitachon. A yid is never stuck. Every situation is an opportunity to bring more light to the world, more positivity to the world. And Hashem should help that everybody should be safe and successful, and we should see a tremendous victory, and very soon the complete and true redemption from Mashiach. This week is Parshas Shelach, very much connected with Eretz Yisrael, where Moshe Rabbeinu sends the Meraglim, the spies, to spy out the land of Israel, and gives them all kinds of instructions, what they should do, what they should look for. And they come back and they deliver their report, and they deliver a very grim report. They were there, they saw the land is very fortified, the people are very strong, and there's no way that we're going to be able to conquer this land. And they say, we won't be able to go up to this nation, because they're stronger, mimenu. The literal meaning of mimenu is they're stronger than us. However, the Talmud says that there's a deeper meaning over here. Mimenu doesn't just mean from us, it also means stronger than him, the capital H. He said, use an analogy of a homeowner that built himself very heavy furniture, and when it wants to move, he can't get his furniture out of the house. It's too heavy for him. Even though he's the homeowner, but the furniture is too heavy for him to move. So they said the Almighty is the creator of the world. He's the homeowner. But the Canaanites are so powerful that they're like the furniture that even the Almighty himself won't be able to move. And therefore they said, it's not going to work. We're going to be smashed into smithereens when we come there. And our children and our wives are going to be taken captive. And it's going to be a terrible calamity. And they convinced the whole Jewish people, and they cried, and the whole time, yeah. And we know what the result was. That. So the simple question is, how is this possible? How could intelligent people who experienced what they experienced, lived through what they lived through, doubt the Almighty's ability to bring the Jewish people into the land of Canaan? After all, these are people who were in Egypt, and they saw the 10 plagues, which were incredibly miraculous. Each one of the 10 plagues was an incredible miracle. They saw Pharaoh, the greatest, mightiest king of his time, be completely humbled before Moshe and Aaron and say, pick yourself up and leave my country together with your nation. Just go. I'm frightened. I'm afraid that I'm going to be next. This is not during the plague of the firstborn. Just get out of here. So they saw the most incredible miracles. They saw the splitting of the Red Sea. They saw the giving of the Torah. They were eating manna from heaven. That very day, they ate manna from heaven. They drank water from the well of Miriam that rolled along with them in the desert. They saw the clouds of glory surrounding them. They saw the ark go ahead of them and destroy all the snakes and scorpions in the desert. So they saw that this is a miraculous phenomenon over here. So what does it mean that they doubted the Almighty's ability to be able to take them into the land? It just doesn't make any sense. And furthermore, when Kalev responds, there were two of the spies that didn't go along with this. They said, we will be able to, right? Yeshua and Kalev. So when Kalev responds to the other Meraglim, you would expect him to say, how can you doubt the Almighty's ability to bring us to the land? Look what he did for us. He took us out of Egypt. He crossed us the Red Sea. He gave us manna. He gave us the water. He did everything for us. You don't think he can pull off another miracle and get us into the land? It doesn't make any sense. He didn't mention a word about that. Just said in Chafetz Banu Hashem, if Hashem wants it to happen, Hashem desires us and wants it to happen, then so we will go up and we will conquer it. The land is very, very good. So where's the dialogue that you would be expecting, where they would say, how can you doubt Hashem's strength? Look at the miracles that he performed for us. So we don't understand how the Meraglim came to that conclusion to begin with, that there's a situation that the Almighty can't deal with. When they saw themselves the display of the Almighty's great might in the most amazing way that you could possibly imagine. And they were seeing it regularly on a daily basis. And why is it that when Kalev responded, he didn't argue that, look at all the miracles, surely Hashem can make some more miracles and get us into the land? So one of the answers to this question, it says, a few weeks ago we had in Parshas Bahar, when you'll come to the land, and Hashem has promised you, 6 years you should sow your field, and 6 years you should prune your vineyard. So the question is, what do I have to sow my field for and prune my vineyard for? I can eat the manna from heaven. Why waste time on tilling the land? Can eat the manna from heaven? Yeah? And the answer is that the manna from heaven only fell until they arrived in the promised land. Once they arrived in the promised land, until they came to a settled land. Once they came to a settled land, there's no more manna, there's no more miracles. Now you have to put on your overalls and to go out into the field. You have to sow and you have to harvest and you have to reap. You have to do everything you have to do. You have to plow. Nothing. The epoch of miracles is over. Now we're entering into an epoch of nature. And they said the proof for this is that you're sending spies. Why are you sending spies? If the plan is that there's going to be a miraculous conquest of the Holy Land, what difference does it make if the land is, if they're fortified, not fortified, if they're hills or valleys, if they're strong or weak? It's completely immaterial. The fact that we were sent and given an agenda to work out, to fill out a form, saying, are they strong, are they weak, do they have hills, do they have valleys, what's the best way to go? It shows that the plan is that the conquest, like the rest of life in the Holy Land, is going to be a natural phenomenon. So they said, we went, and we saw, and we checked it out. And we reached the obvious conclusion. If Hashem wants to make miracles, no one can stand in his way. To make as many miracles as he likes. He's proved himself. He's proved himself in Egypt. He's proved himself in the desert. But I understand the plan is that there's not going to be miracles anymore. Everything's going to go according to the rules of nature. So if everything's going to go according to the rules of nature, the homeowner himself cannot move his furniture out of it. The Canaanites are so powerful that the Almighty, who created the rules of nature and doesn't want them to be defied, he wants the world to exist according to the rules of nature. It's impossible, according to the rules of nature, that a weak nation like us would be able to take on this mighty nation of giants that are so well equipped and so fortified, and they have it's just impossible. According to the rules of nature, it's not going to happen. And the Jewish people believed them because they had a very good argument. They made a very valid point. And they cried. What was their mistake? Their mistake was something very fundamental. We tend to think sometimes that the Almighty is in control in the world of miracles. As long as he wants to make miracles, he can do whatever he wants. But what happens when it comes to the world of nature? Does nature also, is the Almighty in control in the world of nature as well, or only in the world of miracles? In other words, we know that Hashem can send manna from heaven and sustain us. He's done it. He has a track record for 40 years. He sustained us with manna. But the question is, when there's no manna from heaven, and the rules are you have to go to work to earn a livelihood, who's then in control? Who is providing for you then? Is it your job that's providing for you, or is it the Almighty that's providing for you through your job? The same Almighty that provided the manna in the desert is continuing to provide for you, just in different circumstances. He's providing for you through the garment and the vessel that he asks you to provide to contain his blessing. Give me a simple illustration of this. Across the street from the yeshiva where I teach, it used to be, it's gone already many years, but there used to be a fruit store. Two Jewish fellows that owned this fruit store. Unfortunately, they were open on Shabbos. Now, I used to go in there often, I used to schmooze with them. So I once spoke to them, or maybe more than once, about Shabbos. It would be a wonderful thing if they would close the shop on Shabbos. So they explained to me why it's impossible. They said in this neighborhood, most people do their shopping on Shabbos. There's 2 fruit stores in the neighborhood. They both close since. There's 2 fruit stores in the neighborhood. And if we close on Shabbos, all our customers will go to the other fruit store. And we'll be bankrupt in a week. So we can't close on Shabbos, out of the question. So I'm tempted to say to them, you know that the Jewish people were in the desert, 600,000 people and their wives and children for 40 years, and the Almighty provided for them manna from heaven. If I would have said that, what would they have responded? It's all very nice in the desert when the Almighty sent the manna from heaven, but here He doesn't send manna from heaven. Here you got to work to earn your livelihood, right? And the only way to do it is if you find yourself in circumstances where people are prepared to buy your product, and according to the timing that works for them, and they're going to keep you in business. And if you mess about and you don't open when people need you, you're going to go bankrupt. So the question is, who provides your livelihood? Is your livelihood provided by your shop, or is your livelihood provided by the Almighty invested in this container, in this vessel, in this garment? So if you think your shop is providing your livelihood for you, then you have a good argument. My shop only works under these circumstances. But if you realize that the same Almighty that provided the manna in the desert continues to provide for you, it's just that it's through a different vessel, so then ask yourself a simple question. When are you going to be more receptive to the blessings of the Almighty? When you're closed on Shabbos, or when you're open on Shabbos? It's an obvious answer. So if the Almighty is able to sustain you when you're open on Shabbos, how much more so is He going to sustain you when you're closed on Shabbos? The fact that your cheshbonos don't work out, you think differently, is because you think that your shop is arranging your sustenance for you. You don't realize that's the Almighty that's giving you your sustenance. It's just that it's in a certain container, in a certain vessel, in a certain garment. And the same thing holds true for every other area of life. When it comes to health. So the Almighty can cure you miraculously. But what about if He wants things to go according to nature? He wants you to go to the doctor. The doctor's going to prescribe a medication, and you're going to take the medication, and it's going to work, and you can become well. So who's in control then? It's the same Almighty that is in control in the world of nature, just as He is in control in the world of miracles. When it comes to security, so in the desert they had the clouds of glory, and they had the ark went ahead and killed all the snakes and the scorpions, and everything was fine. And when they arrived in different circumstances, the Almighty continued to protect them. Just that He told them that my protection is going to be delivered through this garment and through this vessel. So you make yourself an army, and the army will succeed because Hashem will be with them and will give them success. So if you understand that Hashem's presence is not only in the world of miracles, but His presence is also in the world of nature, then it's a whole different story. And that's where the Meraglim went wrong. You know, the 6 orders of the Mishnah, Zroim, Mayid, Noshim, Nezikin, Kachim, Taris. So the Gemara says, how do we know what the order is? We learn it from a pasuk. Each word in this pasuk corresponds to one of the orders of the Mishnah. First word is Emunas. The Gemara says, Emunah Zuseder Zroim. Emunah refers to the order, the agricultural laws, the order of Zroim. Why? Because one has faith in the one who gives life to the world and sows. Question is, if you have faith, you sit with your arms folded and you say, Hashem is going to help me. If you put seeds in the ground, that doesn't seem to be a display of faith. People that are atheists also put seeds in the ground. So what does it mean that the answer is that is the greatest display of emunah, that a yid puts seeds in the ground and God does everything according to the rules of nature. But why is he doing it? Because he has full belief and full trust in Hashem that Hashem is going to grant him success. And from these seeds that he's putting in the ground, there's going to be a fortune that's going to grow. Not because the rules of nature say that's what's going to happen, but because Hashem is going to make it happen. That's real emunah. Real emunah is to go to be within the realm of nature and realize that in nature Hashem is in control, just like He's in control of the world of miracles. And that's where the Meraglim went. They thought that Hashem is great and powerful and almighty in the world of miracles. But once the epic of miracles finishes, can't deal with it. And the truth is, as Kalev said, in Chafetz Banu Hashem, if Hashem wants this to work, then so we will go up and we will conquer the land. Everything will work perfect. Why? Because that's what Hashem wants. And Hashem can make things happen through the rules of nature exactly in the same way that He can make things happen through the supernatural.
They never have this experience. They never have this experience to be in the nature. Hashem helped them there.
Okay. So this is a good question. That it's hard to hold it against them because they never had that experience. Good point. And it's a good limit schus. And the Rabbi Yitzchak Berditchever would surely agree with you. But at the same time, Moshe Rabbeinu said to them, and Hashem told us, I'm going to take you out of the affliction of Egypt and take you to the land that flows with milk and honey. And Hashem said, you will be able to conquer. So we're expected to trust the word of Hashem, even in a situation where things are not going to be miraculous. Hashem can see us through that as well. And that is such a fundamental part of Yiddishkeit. Because the whole experience of the 40 years in the desert was only an introduction and a preparation for the thousands of years that follow afterwards. So the reason that we had all those miracles in the desert was to show us that Hashem is in control, that we should understand that protection from Hashem and that success that Hashem is granting us is an ongoing, continuous thing. So the question of only the packaging. In the desert, it was in one form of packaging, the packaging of Nisim. And after the desert, it'll be in the packaging of Teva, the packaging of nature. But it's still Hashem. In every single area of our lives, Hashem is 100% in control. The Baal Shem Tov says that even a leaf turns over from one side to the other. It doesn't turn over from one side to the other unless Hashem decreed that it should turn over, and there's a reason for it. So somebody might say, what do you mean? The wind blew, so it turned over. That's true, the wind blew, it turned over. It wasn't a miracle that it turned over. But in details of nature, everything that happens, everything is exactly the way Hashem plans it to be, and the way He wants it to be, and the way He makes it happen. So if somebody, let's say, woke up this past Friday morning, hearing that they attacked the nuclear capabilities of Iran, say, wow, it's a miracle. And then somebody sat down with them and said, you know something? It wasn't such a miracle. They sent planes. Planes had pilots. They had scientists that worked out brilliantly how to jam the airspace, and they got it. Then they had great intelligence people that figured out exactly where every one of the people that they were out to get, exactly where they were, and exactly what needs to be done, and they worked it all out. That itself is the greatest miracle. That Hashem put all the pieces together, and exactly in the right place, and exactly in the right time, and everything was granted success. That itself is a tremendous miracle. It's a miracle invested in nature. And Hashem is no less in control in the rules of nature than He is in control in the realm of the miraculous.
Rabbi Gordon, can I ask you a question?
An atheist planting every single year. We have a holiday.
Shemitah.
The fact that we can survive the age of Shemitah.
100%. So you can say that when you don't plant, that's when you're showing your faith in Hashem, which is true. But the Gemara is saying that when you do so, you're showing your faith in Hashem. Because you're sowing not because you believe that the rules of nature are going to see you through, but you're sowing because you believe that Hashem will see you through. I'll share with you a story that I think brings this out very beautifully. They tell a story about the Gerer Rebbe, the Imre Emes, the grandfather of the current Gerer Rebbe. That there was once a chassid of his who was suffering from a certain illness. So he was thinking of going to the Gerer Rebbe for a bracha or eitzah. But he heard that the Gerer Rebbe, when people come to him for medical things, he sends them to a certain doctor. So he figured, why should I bother the Rebbe, and the Rebbe should send me to the doctor? I'll go straight to the doctor. So he went to this doctor. The doctor examined him, and he told him it's a very serious problem, and there's no cure for it. So he was devastated. So he ran to the Imre Emes. Rebbe, help me. So the Imre Emes heard him out, and he said, go and see this and this doctor. So he said, Rebbe, I was there already. He told me it's incurable. So the Imre Emes said to him, Du hast nicht verstanden im Pshat in Rashi. You don't understand the meaning of the Rashi. Rashi says on the pasuk, "V'rapa yirape," that they should pay his healing bills. From here, from this pasuk, we learn when a doctor has permission to heal. In other words, there are certain religions that say the doctor shouldn't heal because why are you starting up with Hashem? Hashem made the person ill; he knows what he's doing. Don't interfere with Hashem's ways. But the Torah says no. The Torah says it's a mitzvah to heal a person who's ill. The doctor should do everything possible to heal. And similarly, if a person is poor, it's a mitzvah to do everything possible to help them. You don't say if Hashem made them poor, too bad. Yeah. So the simple understanding of the Rashi is mikan. From here we learn the doctor was given permission to heal. So the Imri Emes said to him, "You don't understand. Mikan, from this room, the doctor is given permission to heal. You go to a tzaddik, and the tzaddik tells you to go to this and this doctor. The tzaddik empowers the doctor with divine power to cure you. You think it's a game? You run to the doctor, and the doctor kills. So the point is that, of course, if tzaddik would get up and make like this, and the person would suddenly become healthy, everybody would be impressed. But the Eibishter wanted that it should be through derech hateva. So tells you go to the doctor, and the doctor will prescribe you a medication, and the medication will work, and you become better. So through the rules of nature, the miraculous functions. And the same is true when it comes to security, same is true when it comes to sustenance. Every area of life, it's the divine hand is there at every single detail and every single juncture. And that's what it means to have emunah. It means to believe in Hashem's involvement in every detail of our lives, and that Hashem can do it and will do it.
So you have emunah is going to happen, but you don't do anything. Some people no, they don't doubt, they don't do anything. Just like emunah that is going to be all right. Is it enough?
The pasuk says, "Ubeirachecha Hashem Elokecha b'chol asher ta'aseh." The Almighty will bless you in all that you will do. Yeah, so it means you have to do according to the rules of nature, because that's what Hashem wants you to do, and Hashem will send His blessing. So it's not your doing that's going to make it happen. Hashem's blessing is going to make it happen, but Hashem instructs you to do and make a vessel for His blessings in the rules of nature, because He wants His blessing to come in this way. So just like during the 40 years in the desert, Hashem wanted everything to be in an overtly miraculous way. After the 40 years in the desert, He wanted things to be enclosed in nature. So they're meant to be battles, and they're meant to be wars, and they're meant to evict the Canaanites from Eretz Yisrael according to the rules of nature. But in their efforts, the divine blessing and the divine assistance would be manifest in every single detail. So they will be tremendously successful beyond anything that you could rationally predict.
Yeah, my question was, if they don't do that, they don't say to him, they don't ask. They do what they have to do, military, everything. They believe it's Hashem is going to help. But they don't do it like Marcy Tefillah or even Torah. They don't do that.
Everybody does what they can, and Yidden are doing a lot more than they think. The fact, as far as I heard, I wasn't there, but I heard, and it's amazing. So Kiddush Hashem, that the war cabinet on Thursday night when they met to make the final decision to give a go-ahead for this project, this attack. So they all put on yarmulkes, they took out tillums, and they all said to
It's the people now, if they don't get quickly into the mamad, they're dying, is it? So I don't get that whole, what you're saying.
Okay, so there are things that we don't get. There's no question about it. There are things that we don't get. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
But the fact that hundreds of missiles are coming across,
Yeah.
and every single life is a world. The fact that hundreds of missiles are coming across, each one of those missiles is capable of doing untold damage and untold misery, and nevertheless, the vast majority of them are not getting through, is an unbelievable miracle.
I think about people who are dying.
It is a terrible, terrible tragedy when one person is killed. How much more so 20 people?
No, people. Hashem, he's not helping the 22.
I don't claim to understand all Hashem's ways. And I don't think any human being understands all Hashem's ways. The fact is, people die, many different causes. People die from heart attacks, people die from other situations, and I don't understand that either. But what is overwhelming is the fact that such miracles are unfolding before our eyes, and that is tremendously amazing. I had an encounter with some months ago with an Iranian Gentile, and he says to me, "Tell me, why is it that God listens to your prayers more than anyone else's?" Okay, so let's see the question. If the Meraglim were worried nature, why does the Talmud translate Himenu as him as Hashem? Okay, so let me just explain. What the Meraglim understood was like this, that when Hashem manifests himself through miracles, there's no limit to what he can achieve. Because miracles defy the rules of nature, and anything can happen. As we saw by the Exodus from Egypt, and we saw this throughout the time in the desert. However, if you're telling me, said the Meraglim, that we're going to come to the land of Israel, and over there things are suddenly going to work according to the rules of nature, so then the way Hashem functions through the rules of nature, in other words, he has created certain restrictions that this can happen and this cannot happen. So even if he is the creator and he's the one that set it up, in this system it cannot work. That was their argument. And their mistake was not realizing that Hashem is in control and he can make his agenda work in any system. He can make it work according to the rules of nature. And that's the most amazing thing. That's much more amazing than miracles, because miracles defy nature. And here we're talking about investing in and directing the rules of nature to remain nature, and nevertheless to fully bring out Hashem's agenda. And that is, in a sense, even greater than the divine manifestation that you have through miracles. And it's interesting, I mentioned before that Kalev's words, we will go, it's a double expression of going up. I did a double expression of going up because this level that we're going to reach, Dafka, when we get to the land of Canaan, is a higher level of connection with Hashem than we have in the desert. In the desert, you're basically saying, Hashem is infinite, Hashem is omnipotent, he can do whatever he wants, he can defy all the rules of nature, and he can have it his way no matter what. So you're basically saying, Hashem is infinite. He can, in the realm of infinitude, he can do anything he wants. But in the realm of finitude, there he's stuck. And when you reach this appreciation that Hashem is in control both of the infinite and the finite, that's a much higher level of connection. So it's Olei Nala, we're going to reach even a higher connection to Hashem when we get to the land of Canaan. Because over there we'll come to realize how not only through miracles does Hashem manifest himself, but he manifests himself through the ways of nature as well. So he can send the Yid Parnasa according to the rules of nature. He can protect us according to the rules of nature. He can give us health according to the rules of nature. And nothing can stand in his way. Even the rules of nature don't stand in his way. Not because he didn't defy them, but because he can function right through them. And this is actually one of the explanations of why, when they crossed the Jordan to go into the land of Canaan, so it says the Kohanim carried the Aron on their shoulder, the ark, and they went to the waters of the Jordan. They stepped, as soon as they stepped into the waters of the Jordan split and the Jewish people walked right across. So why do you need the ark? The Red Sea, the Yam Suf split without an ark. Moshe lifted his staff and the Yam Suf split. Why over here do you need the Aron? So we mentioned many times that one of the most phenomenal miracles that happened with the Aron is Makim ha'aron eina min amidah. The space of the Aron was not measured. In other words, even though the Aron was 2.5 amas wide, but from the wall of the Kodesh HaKadosh until the Aron was 10 amas, from the other wall to the Kodesh was 10 amas, from one wall to the other was 20 amas. So 10 and 2.5 equal 20. In place of the Aron didn't matter. So we know there are certain things that don't take up space. A soul doesn't take up space. An angel doesn't take up space. A thought doesn't take up space. An idea doesn't take up space. A feeling doesn't take up space. And there are certain things that do take up space. Tables, chairs, walls, houses, trees, plants, they take up space. people. Here you had something which takes up space and yet does not take up space. It's both together, simultaneously. It was an aron that took up 2.5 amas, and it had to be 2.5 amas. Why? If it was 1 drop less, it wouldn't be a kosher aron, it wouldn't make any miracles. And nevertheless, it didn't take up any space. So it's the fusion of the infinite and the finite simultaneously. So when they crossed the Yarden from the Midbar to go into Eretz Nesheves, to go into the settled land of Canaan, that had to happen with the involvement of the ark. It has this fusion of infinite and finite together. Because that brought them into a world where they were able to see the infinity of Hashem manifest within the finitude of nature, which is a much higher madrega than they had in the Midbar. Therefore, he described it as Olei Nala, there'll be a double effect. So your question is still
Well, you are talking about the positive, but for people, there's a lot of negative in Israel at the moment. So to understand.
I understand 100% what you're saying, and I think you're 100% right. And we should pray to Hashem and insist that everything should be the Toiv HaNirav HaNigla in the most revealed good. And we don't want any have to deal with any painful situation. But at the same time, we have to appreciate the incredible miracles that are happening. I don't think anybody would have predicted in their furthest dreams that something so miraculous could unfold in front of our eyes. We were dealing with a terrible threat, which was about to explode in our faces. Nobody knew how to deal with it, and all of a sudden, all the pieces come together. Just to point out a simple thing, I'm not a big strategist, but one of the impediments to this whole project was the fact that Syria lies straight between Eretz Yisrael and Iran, and they're not very good friends of ours. So the Eibishter helps. So just before this needed to happen, Syria collapses and disappears as an entity that has to be counted. That didn't happen. All this is part of a divine plan that puts everything together in the right place at the right time. And it's just unbelievable how the Almighty is pulling the strings over here in the most amazing way. Does that mean that we don't have any questions? No, we have questions. And we're praying that things should be in a way of absolute revealed good. And we're praying and we're doing mitzvahs and we're doing everything to push this ahead. And that's why I started off the Shiur reading the Sita about how every single person should believe and feel and realize that they have a role to play in making this happen. We're not just bystanders, we're not just watching the show. We have a tremendous role to play, and we have a responsibility, and we have to push ourselves to do the maximum that we can to strengthen ourselves and our bond with Hashem and the bond that every Jew has with Hashem. And the more we reveal our bond with Hashem, the guardian of Israel that doesn't sleep or slumber, the more we will see that protection revealed.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, I love the Bible because it's positive, but actually,
God forbid we don't forget the negative at all. We do everything possible to turn the negative into positive. You can do what you can do, and Hashem has to do the rest.
Because people are dying. The things are dropping on them. So, you know what I mean?
I get what you mean 100%. I feel exactly like you feel. It's very painful when one Jew dies. It's very painful when one Jew is injured. But that doesn't mean that we should lose sight of the big picture. We should feel the pain and still realize the enormity of the divine revelation over here.
You wouldn't feel that if it was your grandchild. You wouldn't think that. Your brain would.
We say that. Yes.
Only in Israel, everyone that is such chesed. But when there are people who lost their home, or who are ill, or who are things, where they all pull together and all help, and there'll be nobody left homeless, and the people need to, and will get them, and the chesed is unbelievable. So wherever there are those situations, everybody comes to help. Yeah. You don't get that anywhere.
You are amazing.
Can I also just add from what Connie was saying? Obviously, like, we care about every Jewish person, like a brother or a child. but it's more powerful obviously, like if you haven't got someone that's been killed, then it's easy to say those things. But when you hear that from a mother who has lost her child in the army or who has a child in captivity, and you hear it coming from them, it is really special. And we've had a lot of shuls and communities have had speakers come from Israel, and you always hear like all of these messages are not depressing, they're very uplifting. And it's not just Chabad, it's not just religious people. We've had soldiers come and speak to us and tell us about the miracles they've seen in Gaza. And someone whose daughter was held hostage started becoming more religious, even though her daughter was in captivity, and she didn't know if she would be safe ever, because she just felt like all I can do is rely on God. So when you hear it from someone who's not in Israel, it might sound like, oh, it's easy to say that, but really people are really living that way.
Also, the complexity of the operation, like I don't have to follow one, especially this one up in Iraq. So many things had to gel together for it to work. How come one look at this and not feel that it's the Yad Hashem? But they did all they could this man, and then the Yad Hashem did it. Because
And even the intelligence and the wisdom to be able to put it together also comes from Hashem.
It's amazing the number of non-Jews who are coming out now saying we're on your side.
That's because they're women.
The people who
And that's also part of the chesed of Hashem. Okay, we're going to move on to Tanya. We're on page 12 is the numbers on the top of the page, 8 is the number on the bottom of the page. It's about 5 lines from the top of the page. Right after the Rosh Tevis Vav Ayin Hey, we're up to the words V'chein nefashos legabe nefashos. So we were in the middle of asking a question. And if all neshamas are chelak elakam imal, all neshamas are a part of God from above, and all neshamas come from the thought and the wisdom of the Almighty, then you would expect to see more unanimity amongst neshamas. The neshamas should all be the same. They should all be very, very spiritual, very holy, very godly. They should all be full of amazing faith and a tremendous understanding of godliness and tremendous feelings of love and fear of Hashem. But we see that there's various neshamas that are very different from one another, both when it comes to the way they perceive things, the way their level of sensitivity. There's a tremendous difference between the neshamas of Moshe Rabbeinu and Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and the neshamas of the people of our generations who are ikvus of the Mashiach, like the heels of Mashiach, the structure of Klal Yisrael. So it's like a body. You have the head is all the way up on top, and the feet and the heels, and the most insensitive part of the body is on the bottom. So you had neshamas of tzaddikim who were so sensitive to godliness. The Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov kept all the mitzvahs before they were given. And one of the questions that's asked all the time is, how did they know the mitzvahs that they weren't given them? And there are various answers. One of the answers is that how do we know that when we're hungry we're supposed to eat? How do we know that when we're tired we're supposed to sleep? It's a natural thing that is the body naturally gravitates toward the things that it needs. When you're as sensitive to your neshama as you are to your body, so the neshama naturally gravitates to the things that it needs. So Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah kept the whole Torah because they became in touch with their neshama, and the neshama naturally gravitated towards the things that the neshama desires, which are mitzvahs. So just to talk about such a level of sensitivity that's so different from what we experience. So how can we say that we're all part of the same thing? We're all from the same, or chip off the same block. We all come from the same chelak elakam imal. We're all from the same machshavte, the thought and the wisdom of Hashem. If there's such a difference between the neshamas of the previous generations and the neshamas today. And then he said that the same question also applies. I think we learned this last week. Just going back a few lines. In the third line of the page. Similarly, in every generation itself, Yashdashe Alpha Yisrael, they are the leaders of the Jewish people, the tzaddikim, who whose souls are like the head and the brain. It's comparing them with the souls of the masses and the ignorant people. So it's not only the previous generations and these generations, also within each generation itself. You have the tzaddikim of the generation that are like the head and the brain, and you have the ordinary people of the generation that are like the feet. And it's going to be a tremendous difference between their level of sensitivity and their perception, the way they perceive things. There'll be a tremendous difference in one and the other. In fact, it says that we say on Sukkot, we say, Rachmanu Yakim Lanu was Sukkah's David Hanefelos. Lift us up the Sukkah of David that has fallen. So one of the reasons that it's compared to a Sukkah is when a Sukkah collapses, the walls collapse. The skach remains, just falls because the walls fell. So the structure of the Jewish people is compared to a Sukkah. You have the walls, which is the ordinary people, and you have the skach, the roof, the top is the tzaddikim. So even when it collapses, it's only the walls that collapse, but the skach remains the same. So even in later generations, you have tzaddikim whose neshamas are similar to the neshamas of tzaddikim of previous generations. But nevertheless, just like you have from the early generations to the later generations, a vast difference, you have within each generation itself, between the tzaddikim of the generation and the ordinary people of the generation, also a vast difference. So the same question that we ask, how could you say that it's all it's all a part of Hashem, and it's all from the wisdom and the thought of Hashem, if there's such a vast difference between one and another? Then the Alter Rebbe continues, this question doesn't only apply to the level of the neshama and the ruach, it also applies to the level of nefesh. And just to explain, the Medrash says, Chamisha Shemus Nikru Lo, the neshama has 5 names: nefesh, ruach, neshama, chaya, and yechida. And nefesh primarily means the way we connect to Hashem through our actions. Ruach primarily means how we connect to Hashem through our emotions. Neshama is how we connect to Hashem through intellectually. Chaya is the super rational will. And Yechida is the essence of the connection through Mesiras Nefesh, when a Yid completely gives himself up for Hashem. And Mr. Safran has helped us many times by suggesting that we could remember these 5 levels with the 5 vowels of the English alphabet. A, E, I, O, U. A stands for action, E stands for emotion, I for intellect, O, Mr. Safran's suggestion, stands for obstinacy, which has a bit of a negative connotation, but it does mean obstinacy. When you're obstinate, it means you're insistent. Akshanis, this is the way it has to be, whether it makes sense or not. So there is an aspect of the neshama that has this powerful drive to connect to Hashem, even in a case where it doesn't make sense. The mind of the time to that. That's chaya. Then you have yechida as unity. The unity that the neshama feels with Hashem, that is one with Hashem, and it can't be separated under any circumstances. So those are the 5 levels of the neshama. So when it comes to the 3 basic levels that we can relate to consciously, we have the level of neshama, which is the intellectual connection, the level of ruach, which is the emotional connection, and neshama, which is the practical connection. So one might say, where would you expect to see the greatest difference between one Jew and another? Probably in the intellectual and in the emotional. But in the practical, everybody does the same thing. Everybody does the same mitzvahs. So just to illustrate this, a simple illustration. Let's say you have a room of 20 women lighting Shabbos candles. Now, they're all doing an act, striking a match, lighting a candle, making a bracha. But it's going along with a kavanah, it's going along with intention, it's going along with a deeper experience, an emotional, intellectual experience. How much you understand what you're doing, how much you feel for what you're doing, right? So if you have 20 people in a room, where would you expect to see more unanimous? They should all be the same. And where would you expect to see more variety? So in the area of action, pretty much everybody's doing the same thing. Everybody's striking a match, lighting a candle. That's what they're doing. But in the area of how they're emotionally connecting with the experience and how they're intellectually relating to the experience, every person's in a world for themselves. So when you say that Yidden are very different from one another, and therefore, how can we say that they all come from the same Chelak Elokami Mal? How could you say that they all come from the thought and speech of Hashem, the thought and wisdom of Hashem, if they're so different from one another? So at first glance, you would say that question is a valid question when you're dealing with neshama, the intellectual relationship that a Yid has with Hashem. You're going to see an immense difference between one Yid and another. When it comes to the emotional difference between one Yid and another, you'll see a tremendous difference. And when it comes to nefesh, when it comes to practical connections, to practical mitzvahs, it's pretty much one size fits all. Nevertheless, says the Alter Rebbe, "V'chein nefashos l'gamei nefashos." My question is not only on the level of neshama and ruach. My question is also on the level of nefesh. Why? He called nefesh klula min nefesh ruach and neshama. Because every nefesh is composed of three parts. There's the neshama within the nefesh, the ruach within the nefesh, and the nefesh within the nefesh. Meaning, you have the action per se, you have the emotion that's invested in the action, and you have the intellect that's invested in the action. So the action itself has three parts to it. So even though the action itself might be the same for everybody, but the emotion invested into the action and the intellect invested into the action is different. I'm not sure if I mentioned this recently. They say about the Litza Barditchever that after 9 days of not putting on film over Sukkot, so the next morning he went to get his film, and his film were in a glass box. He didn't have the patience. He was so excited to be able to put on film once again. He didn't have the patience to open up the box and take them out. He put his hand straight through the glass. I said it last week. Okay, so I guess it's still the case. It's still true. So that's the emotion that is in the action. You see the action overflowing with emotion. So even though we're talking about an action, two people might be doing the same action, but the fact that the action has in it the emotion shows that the action is a different action. So therefore, the kasha is not only on the neshama and ruach, but it's also the nefashos, the gabe nefashos. Why? He called nefesh kula nefesh ruach neshama, because every nefesh is composed of nefesh ruach and neshama. You have the neshama of the nefesh, the ruach of the nefesh, and the nefesh of the nefesh. And therefore, the question that we ask about how different one yid is from another is not only applied on the intellectual level of connection, on the emotional level of connection, it also applies on the practical level of connection, which comes through performing practical mitzvahs. So we still want to find out the answer. Now, next week, I will not be there. Won't be a share next week. The Mitzvah Hashem in 2 weeks' time, be another. And to mention that between now and then, we're coming to Gimel Tammuz. Sunday a week is Gimel Tammuz. It's the anniversary of the Rebbe's Stalkut, the Rebbe's passing, the yard site. And it's a tremendous opportunity to, it says on the yard site of a tzaddik, everything he's achieved, all his teachings and all his good deeds, they all unite and form one entity that rises to the highest realms. Some kind of a spiritual explosion takes place over there, and it comes showering down, energizing and blessing, and there's tremendous amount you can connect with on this day. So in preparation for this day and on this day itself, one should look for every opportunity to connect with the Rebbe. One should write to the Rebbe, the name and the mother's name, the names of the family for brachas, and strengthen oneself in fulfilling the Rebbe's instructions, living with the Rebbe's enthusiastic, positive, uplifting message of being positive and having bitachon, having a lot of trust in Hashem, and doing everything that one can to spread the word. Mashiach is coming. Golus is not a long-term plan, and as Hashem, very, very speedily will be all reunited in the Beis Hamikdash.
Mashiach is coming. When you see the post, that
Thank you.
You heard it?
Sorry, what was the
When
question?
you say Mashiach is coming.
Yeah,
Just say
it's good to say it, but it's even better to mean it.
it's better. It does something.
Of course, when you mean it, it's even better.
Thank you.